Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Mm-hmm. We are always glad to be meeting you here on the podcast. Hey, this episode is a continuation of last week's discussion. So if you happen to miss last week's podcast episode, I would recommend you go back and check that out. It's episode 59. Listen through that first and then come back and join us here because we're going to pick up right where we left off and continue that conversation just on the other side of the intro. We'll see you in just a minute. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your stepfamily from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds.
Understanding the kids' perspective.
Romance and partnership.
Parenting with great teamwork.
And yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of stepfamily life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
I'm wondering, what kind of advice would you give to a parent who can really relate to all this? They're listening and they're going, oh my gosh, that's me. And they're concerned that they might be making parenting decisions from this place that you're describing about guilt and fear. So they're kind of that paralyzed parent who's maybe fallen into that pattern of permissiveness, if I can say that word right, permissiveness. and maybe they just don't feel like they have much parental authority right now with their kids. Is it possible even at this point to turn things around, even after this has been going on for a long time?
Absolutely. I would say, yes, you can turn things around if, and here's the caveat, if you're willing to do the work to overcome those driving emotions of guilt and fear that aren't serving you or your family well.
Yeah.
You must be willing to step up and into that position of authority with your kids and really put in the work toward creating a united parenting partnership with your spouse.
Wow.
And, you know, I don't say this lightly.
I know, I get it.
This is a process that will take time. It's going to take effort and some persistence. And you will need to be able to take some short-term risks for the long-term benefits and for the health of your family.
Interesting.
And, you know, for me, there were two motivating factors that really got me moving and doing the work that was necessary.
Okay.
The first one was you, honey, and our marriage.
Oh, that's nice.
And, you know, I heard from Ron Deal, even before we got married, about the importance of moving our marriage into the foundational position of the home, which was a hard thing to swallow at first.
I bet.
But I was aware that my priorities were going to need to shift. So right out of the gate, we started to experience those painful realities of my permissive parenting because you felt like that stranded stranger without any real input around parenting Annika. And you were really frustrated with the lack of structure and accountability.
I agree.
And I felt the pain of being that trapped teammate. No matter what decision I made or who I chose,
Quote,
either
unquote,
you or Annika, someone was going to be unhappy. There was a lot of unhappiness, and I felt like I wasn't doing anything right. So these realities that were so difficult, just understanding the dynamics and what needed to happen for things to work for our family, that really motivated me to take some action and to start moving beyond fear and guilt.
I can see that, Well, what about the other motivating factor?
Well, the other motivating factor for me was this one question. How does permissive parenting impact children?
That's a good question to ask.
Honestly, answering that question was an important realization for me. It really was. Because what I learned is that every child needs consistent, firm, and loving parental guidance. They need that trusted parent who's willing to set and enforce appropriate limits and really teach their kids values, character traits, and necessary life skills. And this is crucial to children's development and to their overall success in life. And you know what? Even though kids may not like them, appropriate limits and structure makes children feel secure and loved.
Wow.
It's the truth.
We've got to own that.
Yeah. So what I came to realize is that I loved and I cared too much about my daughter to let her grow up without learning the value of healthy boundaries and appropriate behaviors.
That's good.
And I knew that I wasn't the kind of mom I wanted to be. At that point, I realized that I needed to reclaim my parental authority, even if I had to experience discomfort and work through my guilt and my fears.
Wow.
This was just too important. I wasn't going to allow my emotions to impact how I parented because I knew that in the bigger picture, it could be really detrimental to my daughter and to our family if I didn't make some changes. My fear of what could happen if I didn't step up and do something different became greater than my original worries that were generated from my guilt and fear.
Yeah.
And I also didn't want to feel guilty later for not being the mom that I knew my daughter needed. So I guess in essence, I became keenly aware that nothing was going to change until I changed. And that's when I decided to get to work.
That's really powerful. Now, you know what? I'm just imagining that there might be a few bio parents listening, and if you're maybe feeling like you've got this pit in your stomach.
Yeah, if you're relating to any of this.
Yeah. And we really do get that. This was a difficult thing for us to
have a
walk
pit
through.
in my stomach just talking about it. It was hard.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes just thinking about becoming a more authoritative parent can feel overwhelming and really scary. And I want to clarify something here. I'm someone who grew up in a home where parenting was approached from a much more authoritarian perspective. Parenting was about command and control. And I want you to know that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, we're not talking about compliance.
No. There is a huge difference between authoritarian parents and authoritative parents. And we really encourage couples to take more of an authoritative approach. So if you want to learn more about that, you may want to go back and check out episode number 4 called Can You Overcome Your Parenting Style Differences? That's a huge question.
Yeah, because we tend to lean into different places.
That's right. So here's the thing. If you're dealing with guilt and fear as a bio parent, we want you to know that it's okay to reach out for help with all this.
Absolutely.
These are tough emotions to work through, and working with a coach or a counselor can be really effective. You know, honey, counseling was helpful for you in this area, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And remember that we always recommend that you're sure that any coach or counselor you reach out to has specific training or experience with blended family dynamics. There's a lot of great counselors out there, but they're not always aware of the uniquely specific needs of a blended family as opposed to a first family. And a first family approach to blended family dynamics can sometimes create more challenges rather than resolve them. So just be aware of who you're reaching out to when you decide to go get support.
Yeah, because all of my guilt and fear were really centered on the divorce and the remarriage and the blending process.
That's right. Now, maybe you're not quite ready to reach out for help yet. Then you might just want to consider reading our blog article called How to Move Beyond Painful Guilt and Regret. It's pretty clear in the title there of what that's about. And it can help you to start sorting out some of the things that you might have rattling around in your brain, and just start to gain some new perspectives.
Sure.
You could also check out our blog called 2 Simple Steps to Getting Past Paralyzed Parenting. So those are some resources you might kind of check out on your own.
Yeah.
And we'll link to that in the show notes. Now, there are a few more barriers for bio parents in this whole dynamic. So we're going to dive even a little bit deeper and discover how you can gain the confidence and the skill necessary to start moving things forward. One additional barrier to growth in the area of shifting priorities and rebalancing relationships is insecurity. Or lack of confidence.
Absolutely.
Right?
I was there too.
Yeah. It's not easy to change longstanding patterns with your kids. And often we hear a desire from a bio parent who really wants to step up and reclaim their parental authority. Like they recognize all this stuff we've been talking about and go, you know what? I think there's some truth in that and I want to do something different. They just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And this is where working to develop some new parenting skills is necessary. And again, we want to affirm that it's okay to reach out and get some support. We can all improve our parenting skills, and there's no shame in admitting that you could just use a little extra guidance when you're moving from permissive parenting to a more authoritative approach. You're going to need a solid parenting method in your toolbox, one that works for you, and it's got to be relatively easy to follow.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And once I hit that point where I knew things needed to change, we both engaged in a season of learning new parenting skills. And what we landed on was the Love and Logic parenting method. And this was one that worked well for us. It was authoritative. And my daughter Annika actually responded pretty positively to it.
And after that, our mutual kids responded really well to that too.
Absolutely. We've used it for years. We'll link some information about Love and Logic in the show notes. And there's a great one, by the way, for parenting teens. Awesome book. But if it's not a good fit for you, that's okay. Do some research and find a parenting method that focuses on authoritative style of parenting, which sets and enforces high standards for the kids while emotionally responding to them with care and respect.
That's good.
Now, this parenting style, authoritative, is equally firm and loving, and all the research shows that the authoritative parenting style is the best predictor of better outcomes for children on every measure imaginable, including emotional well-being, social competence, academic performance, and general behavior.
We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion. Yeah, that's right. And if you can learn, practice, and consistently apply an authoritative style of parenting, you're going to gain the confidence that you need to step up and try something new.
Absolutely.
Now, we need to mention that your roles as bio and step parents will be different when you go to set the expectations and enforce consequences with kids. So be very careful around how you go about doing that. If you need some guidance, you can read our blog article. There's some more resources. You can read our blog article called How to Parent as a Team and Steer Clear of Power Struggles. Again, we'll link to that. But here's the bottom line. If you can agree on a parenting method as a couple, if you can learn about that method together and then work in unity to put that method into practice, you will find that after a while, you'll experience what we call being parenting partners. Lots of couples share that their parenting styles are just so different and they don't see how in the world they'll ever be able to get on the same page. And you know what? Kim and I used to really think that way too. But what most of us are really saying when we make statements like that is, I want to parent the way I want to parent because my way is the right way and your way is wrong. And I'm not willing to examine my own parenting beliefs or consider making adjustments. Yeah. That's really what we're saying. And, sometimes bio parents might be quietly thinking, well, if anyone's going to adjust, it's going to be you because these are my kids.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's true. But here's the problem. All of that assumes that parenting is something that we are, not a skill that we do. We sometimes have this assumption that our parenting style is kind of like our height. like we can't change it, right? We're as tall as we are, or as short as we are, and that's the way it is. Or it's like our personality. It just is who we are, right? But the problem is that leads to us constantly defending our parenting style rather than saying, you know what? Parenting is a skill that can be learned, practiced, and developed. And if I'm willing to put in the effort to learning and practicing this skill for the good of my kids and the good of my family, then maybe we're going to get somewhere. That's where we had to get.
Oh, yeah.
We had to get there individually. What Kimberly had to decide was that she didn't know everything about parenting, and she was going to go find out how she could develop some new skills. Mm-hmm. And here's what I had to decide. I had to decide that I didn't know everything about parenting either.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is at this time, I didn't even have any biological kids.
But you thought you knew a lot.
Yeah. So you'd think that I would have easily had that realization for myself, but it wasn't as easy as you would think. But once we each got to the point where we owned the fact that we could learn and practice something new, then we agreed on a parenting method and we chose to work together. That's when the magic started to happen, and we started becoming a team and building unity in the way that we parented. And that did amazing things for our marriage as well. So I just want to encourage you to check out Love and Logic. Maybe that's a starting point. Or like Kim said, find another method that you can agree on and then make it a priority to read the book, take the class, whatever it is, and intentionally and regularly practice what you're learning.
Yeah, then you're not fighting for control over my way, your way.
Yeah.
You've got a method to land on and a guide.
As a team.
Exactly.
You're focused on it together.
Yeah, I know. I took that Love and Logic class 3 or 4 times, and Mike, you took it a couple times with me, and we practiced and practiced and practiced it, and it was so well worth the effort. It benefited all of our kids, and it drew us closer together.
Sure.
It really did. But here's the deal. This is much easier said than done.
Agreed.
We know that from our own story and from other couples we've coached. And the truth is that there was a big risk I had to face when we got started on all of this. Because I knew what was going to happen with my daughter, Annika.
Sure.
I knew she was going to push back and pull out all the stops to get me to just stick with the status quo.
Yeah.
You know, things were going her way. Why would she want anything different?
That is a big risk.
Yeah, it is. And I realized that she was probably going to ramp up a lot of her behaviors in an effort to get what she wanted. She was going to resist those boundaries, and she was going to continue to throw her fits. I mean, let's face it. Most of us don't like to deal with change when it comes to the things that we get to control.
Yep.
And that can be especially true for kids.
Yeah, she didn't want to lose that control.
No. But here's the important thing that I finally came to realize. The short-term risks of helping Annika learn to adjust were nothing compared to the long-term benefits that this was going to bring to her when it came to helping her build character and self-control. And that ultimately, this was an investment into my daughter's healthy move toward adulthood, as well as the peace and the connection for our family as a whole.
Wow. It impacted a lot.
It did. So if you're feeling like this is too big of a risk for you, and I know it can be challenging, I felt that way too. But I just want to encourage you to face that risk with courage. You can do this. You know, maybe you're sitting there and you're listening and you're thinking right now that you're willing to make some changes, sure, but only to the extent that it feels really safe for you. You don't want to leave your comfort zone.
Is that really taking a risk?
No, you know, it's really not taking the risks that are necessary in order to experience the parental authority that you're going to need if you want to have some unity in your marriage, that unity that you really want. You can't move forward or make real progress until you're ready to take those risks.
Yeah, the risks
and
that
you're
are
willing.
necessary.
Yeah. And what I actually have learned over the years, looking back especially, is that those risks that I had built up in my head that were so big and scary, the reality that I discovered after I took those risks and practiced new skills and saw how our rebalancing radically transformed our marriage and our family, they really weren't that big of a deal.
Yeah. So you built them in your head bigger than they really were.
Yeah, they really weren't reality. So it's okay that you're afraid, but don't let fear keep you from taking the necessary risks to get what you're really after.
That's really good, honey. I'm glad you shared that. I know I watched you walk through that process, and it was hard.
Tough.
It was really hard. I get it. Well, there's another risk, and I want to talk about that. It's a perceived risk that if you, as a bio-parent, decide to step up and become a more authoritative parent and gradually rebalance all these relationships in your family, that your kids are going to feel unloved or deprioritized.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you'll notice I said it's a perceived risk. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. But one of the problematic thoughts around these parent-child allegiances has to do with comparing and ranking love.
Yeah.
And we all kind of fall into this trap sometimes, especially in a blended family. Sometimes a bio parent is going to resist the process of elevating their marriage because they're worried that the kids might think that they love their spouse more than they love them, the kids. And this is problematic thinking because it keeps you in a position of feeling like love is a limited resource and it could run out. So you have to allocate it properly, right? If it's going to be a limited resource. And what that really does is it robs you of being able to freely love your spouse in front of your kids. And ultimately, it reinforces the parent-child allegiance. Yeah. And although this worry might feel very real, and you might even have kids vocalizing things like, well, you love him more than me, right? The reality is that love is not a limited resource. And we all need to understand that the love you feel for your child is qualitatively different than the love you feel for your spouse.
Yeah, it's not the same.
And those two different kinds of love are not limited. It's a misguided fear because it's perceived that a parent only has a certain number of love points, quote unquote, to extend. And once they've divvied up all those love points, then they're just used up, right? Everyone else is just going to have to go without. And we all know, as we sit here and talk about it, that this just simply isn't true.
Yeah.
And we have to own that.
Yeah, but children, they often do feel insecure when their parent remarries. And often they'll attempt to play that "you love him more" card as a means to manipulate the parent into choosing them and giving into their demands.
Yeah. And if they see you giving into their demands, they're going to play that card even more.
Yeah. But bio parents who know that they can love many people at once, they won't be manipulated by this. You can gently explain to a child that, you know, honey, I have enough love for you and for my spouse.
That's right.
But if you've got a child that just won't let go of this issue and is really struggling here, Ron Deal recommends what he calls the speech.
Ooh, the speech. Dun, dun, dun.
And the speech can help a child to move on. And it sounds like this. You know, honey, because you keep bringing this up, I can tell that you need some reassurance. I do love you. You are my child and I'm committed to you for life. And I'm committed to my husband or my wife for life as well. It's not about who's number one in my life. You both are. Just like all of my kids are equally important to me, both you and my husband are equally important. You kids are the most important children in my life, and he is the most important adult in my life. You're both number one, and I hope you can rest in that, honey.
I like that delineation between the kids and the adults.
Yeah,
and you're both number one.
Yeah,
that's great.
Now, you can find a copy of the speech, if you need it, on page 108 of the Smart Step Family. And it can also be tweaked, of course, a bit if you've got a child who's feeling deprioritized or neglected. You can simply insert words like, I'm committed to meet all your needs and taking care of you. I'm here for you, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, that's good.
I can be supportive of you and of my husband equally. You can tweak it a bit.
Good reassuring messages.
Yeah. Now, in both these situations, if a child is voicing complaint or concern, you know, it could be an indication that this child does have some needs that aren't being met. And that's part of the equation. We have to remember that our kids are going to need to be supported throughout this rebalancing. So you might need to ask them why they're feeling this way, and then make it a point to carve out some quality time to spend with them. You know, it could be that they're feeling disconnected from you with all the changes going on. Maybe they're feeling overlooked or just lost in all of the challenging and confusing dynamics of blending families. So take some time to assess what might be going on for this child and then do what you can to meet their needs. But don't buy into the false belief that if you make your marriage a priority, you're hurting your kids.
Yeah.
You can honor your marriage and care for your kids at the same time.
Yeah, that's really good. And we've got to also remember that regardless of all the challenges, your kids are bonded to you.
Oh, yes.
They love you and they need you in their life, even when they're feeling unsettled about all the changes or really feeling frustrated. Your relationship with the kids probably isn't as fragile as you think it is, right? You'd have to work really hard at being a pretty horribly bad parent to destroy the bond that you have with your bio kids.
Yeah.
So stay secure in the relationships that you have with the kids and don't allow misguided fear to keep you from doing what's best for them.
Absolutely.
And really, ultimately, for your family. When you're able to set the example of a healthy bonded marriage in your home, what that translates to for kids is safety and protection. You're modeling for your children what that healthy marriage looks like, which ultimately is going to benefit them now and for their future relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Wow. We have covered a ton of stuff in this episode. And it's all really being focused on the bio parent. But
so far,
I want to say to step parents, you are not off the hook here, okay? You have a really critical role to play in alleviating the pain of this parent-child allegiance. And we're going to tackle that in a future episode. So be on the lookout for that. But for you bio parents who are experiencing those emotions and reactions that feed into the parent-child allegiance, and you might be thinking to yourself, wow, what we've talked about today is exactly what I've been feeling. So what's the solution? Like, how do I get past this, right? And that's pretty normal. Most of us at this point want that silver bullet solution so that we can wake up tomorrow and experience a radical new change in our parenting and our marriage, right?
That'd be great.
It's awesome. Unfortunately, this doesn't typically happen that way.
No.
Now, what we can say is that awareness is a huge step toward healing and change, and that's what we're hoping to bring in this episode. And your first step is to take your awareness to kind of a next level. Now, here's one way to do that. This week, maybe over the next couple of weeks, we're going to challenge bio parents to be intentional about your awareness of what's happening inside you when conflict or tensions hit when it comes to parenting in your home. Try to put a name to your feeling, like I'm feeling inadequate, or I'm feeling insignificant, or I'm afraid. And then see if you can identify which barrier that we talked about today that might kind of categorize into.
Yeah. One that I felt a lot was disrespected.
Yeah. Was that connected, do you think, to guilt, to fear, or to some sort of insecurity? What do you think?
Probably guilt.
Yeah. So you would choose to allow disrespect to happen because you felt guilty about holding a boundary.
Exactly.
Yeah? That's great. See how you can just examine that. And if you really want to make this awareness significant, you can say it out loud to yourself. I'm feeling really disrespected right now. And you know what? I think that might be connected to my guilt. Just saying that out loud.
Yeah, just call
Now,
it out.
once you do that, you can supercharge this if you find a way to keep a log of it when it's happening.
Journal it.
Yeah, and you just jot a few notes down about what you're feeling and which category it is. Date it. I would even say put a time on it because you might need to log this more than once in a day. And as you do this over a week or two, you're likely to see a pattern emerge between those three categories. Maybe your pattern's going to reveal guilt, like Kim just shared. Maybe it's going to reveal that insecurity, or maybe it's going to be all about fear. And that's going to help you to get a focal point in what you really want to deal with around change. You can do a little research about overcoming that guilt, or maybe reach out for some support from a coach or a counselor and already know what you're wrestling with and how you might just get started with them.
It's a great step.
Now, in addition to building intentional awareness, you can tap into all the resources that we shared in this episode so that you can continue to learn and grow in this area of releasing the parent-child allegiances and really reclaiming your parental authority. In the show notes, we've linked to all the resources that we've mentioned for quick and easy reference for you. So this week, maybe you just need to choose one and do some of that research. And we've uncovered some barriers also, as we've talked through this episode, that
quite a few
can really get in your way and will most likely take some work to overcome. So there's some work to do, but there's hope.
Yes.
And you can recover even from longstanding parent-child allegiances if you're willing to do that work and gain the skills that you're going to need to move beyond these barriers.
Yeah. And, I just want to encourage you, if you're a bio parent, to just go for it and not let your guilt or your fears or your insecurities or anything else that we've talked about, or maybe you're experiencing something we haven't talked about, but don't let these things stop you from taking steps forward.
Yeah.
In my experience struggling through this, it was well worth the effort to go for it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not without risk. But the long-term benefits that will help your blended family really thrive are well worth those short-term risks and well worth the work.
Yep.
I know from my own personal parenting journey that facing my emotional barriers and owning up to my permissive patterns, it was quite painful. It was not easy.
Yeah.
But the truth is that choosing to change your parenting approach and intentionally setting some new boundaries with your kids takes skill and consistent effort. This is not an easy road.
Practice. Yeah.
But I'm so glad that I decided to do something different because it really paid off over the years. Developing some new parenting strategies has benefited my daughter, who really needed an authoritative parent to guide her with strength and with love.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't always perfect, and you won't be either. But I did improve over time, and my confidence and my competence as a parent started to grow. It's exciting when you start to grow these skills. In stepping up and accepting my position as the primary authority with my daughter, Annika, I was able to protect and support Mike as he worked to build relational connection with his stepdaughter.
Yeah, you did a great job.
This freed both of them up, and they were able to create a strong and lasting bond where some genuine connection, influence, and appropriate authority eventually emerged over time.
Yeah, it took a while, and a lot of effort and a lot of arguments and tears and all that, but we got there.
It's so doable.
It's great. Yeah. And really, this whole step relationship thing is where we're going to focus our time next time. That role of the step parent in all of this. We want to uncover some of their unique barriers that can make the process of rebalancing even more of a challenge for the family. So don't miss the next episode where we're going to dive into the step parent's role in all this, as well as building unity as a couple along the way.
So important.
Absolutely. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, we want to encourage you, just click that button on whatever platform you're listening on. We would love your help in continuing to build that feedback. So if you could do that, that'd be great. And next time we'll be talking with step parents. But for today, this makes this episode a wrap.
Until next time.